Well, welcome. Our session today was on fostering equity in summer transition programs through a cross-curricular lens. And your presenters today, my name is Lena Bradshaw. And I am a program specialist for ABC Unified School District. My primary focus is mathematics, but I also help support science and PE as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lora, Ayala. I work really closely with Lena. I'm the science program specialist, and I also help support health.
So just to give you a little bit of background about our school district, we're located in Southern California in the Artesia Cerritos Hawaiian Gardens area. And so we have a little under 20,000 students, and we are a K through 12 district. And as you can see our ethnic breakdown, we've also included the ethnic breakdown for you just to give you a glimpse of what our district looks like in terms of ethnic makeup and also geographically where we are located. So the Summer Prep Academy basically this started a couple of years ago, and we were looking at, we wanted a transition program for our incoming 7th and 9th graders, and we were going to hold this during our summer school time. And it would be either 20 or 25 days, generally 20 days for incoming 7th, 25 days for incoming 9th graders. And we were looking at having students basically involved in the program 3 to 4 hours per day, and also who are the students that we thought might benefit from this program, looking just kind of at some of the data our district had in regards to high school students, but generally what we ended up doing was looking at recommendations by 6th and 8th grade teachers of students who had high potential but maybe weren't performing as well as their peers in their classes, or just maybe needed more support, would benefit from more mentoring, and also looking at curriculum a little bit differently than what they've traditionally done. So we were really looking for, students who perhaps if they looked at curriculum in a different venue, and really with teachers that they would probably be seeing either at the middle or high school level. These are the kids then that we were inviting to participate in our program. So next, and again, kind of thinking about who these students were and why we started this program. Just to give you some statistics in terms of data collection, what initially would happen with our 9th graders. And so this really prompted the start of this program. So initially we only had a transition program between middle school to high school, which we called high school prep. And we were very concerned about performance of our students, especially when credit recovery grew at an alarming rate. And of course, we were looking at who these students were. And so we noticed that our underserved communities were still being underserved. And so we wanted to make sure that, these students who were typically in 9th grade not doing well, we wanted to make sure that they would have someone that they could foster a relationship with, so in a mentoring type program, and also get in terms of looking to see what was on campus, resources available, clubs, programs, and then also tie in what are some of the skills students would need that would give them greater success moving forward. All right, next slide. So initially when we had started our program, the program has evolved over several years, but in particular, we want to focus on this summer revamping our program. So initially, the program had started out with what were some of the skills students typically struggled in. We wanted to have build a mentorship for the students, so they would have somebody that they already knew and could communicate still with on campus when they arrived in the fall. And so, we had done that, but then we looked at some data again, and we were still, our results were not what we were hoping they would be. And so we really started to think about, what is it that these kids would really want, or what is it that perhaps they need? And also, are we really taking a look at the assets that they come in with and building from there? So this summer, we have revamped our program, and it's been evolving over the years, and leading up to this year where we've done a major revamp. So we looked at it through the lens of equity, which led us to a cross-curricular curriculum. And to get to that point, what needed to happen in terms of team collaboration to help develop or put together a curriculum, recruit teachers who would be vested and interested in science. And of course, we wanted to make the experience where students are engaged in skills and other perhaps building activities that would help them not only in high school, but later once they leave us, whether they choose to go to college or some other career technical path. And of course, that also meant we wanted to look at our incoming middle school students as well. All right, next slide. So I'm gonna start with equity. So in terms of equity, we wanted to think about a couple of things. One was, once these students leave us, what is really happening out in the world? So we did find this study, and it talked about problem-solving skills, and especially problem-solving skills necessary for meaningful participation in our democratic institutions. So thinking about what had been happening over the past several years, especially this last year with the pandemic, we wanted to make sure things were relevant to students. So we really thought about, what are going to be some things that are meaningful to our students that will engage them in problem-solving skills, and also numeracy as well. And I'll talk more about numeracy when we get to the cross-curricular piece. So looking at it from the lens of, what do students really need when they leave us? And also, next slide, thinking about when students come to us from elementary school, or where they're leaving and going into the high school. One of the things we took a look at was culturally responsive teaching and the brain by Zaretta Hammond. And one of the things that really stood out for us was dependent versus independent learners. And so this made us really take a closer look at, where are these students going in terms of class placements? What are they being exposed to in their classes? Are they given rich, rigorous tasks, or is it more of a rote memorization, facts and figures type of work to do? And then, of course, that also meant going through classrooms, taking a look just as a general, what's going on across the district, and what is happening with our students who are being underserved. And so we looked at dependent versus independent learners. And so, as Hammond explains in her work, we want to make sure that our students are receiving instruction in higher order skills development, because oftentimes these students are not. And we also want them to move from what is called dependent learners to independent learners, so that they're not sitting passively, that they are carrying more of that cognitive load, that they are getting new tasks, and that they're learning how to learn. So in the chat, one of the things we want to ask you as well is how do you support struggling students to become independent learners? Because that is, we would like to hear from you and perhaps what your district or school sites have done, because that is one of the things we have really focused on for basically our evolving program. So let's take a couple of minutes, and if you'd like, you can also unmute yourself and share out as well.
Hi, I'm Fina from Stanislaus. What we've been doing the last 4 years is, but I work with children between 3 and 5 preschoolers. We've been, especially the children that have challenging behaviors, we've been trying to catch them when they're doing, acknowledging them when they're doing something well. So even if it's for, you know, the most minimal thing, oh, you did it, you were able to walk over to your, you know, center table and enjoying, you know, and make a big deal out of it. And it really has shown a difference in the children start being doing more behaviors that are I don't want to say acceptable, but the word is not coming to me right now. Wanted behaviors and unwanted behaviors, because we're acknowledging them when they're doing something well, and we're avoiding things, unless it's a safety, things that are not going well.
Thank you. I'm noticing some things in the chat. Strengths-based approach, providing low floor, high ceiling tasks, providing opportunities and choices. Yes, definitely supporting that whole notion of independence, independent learners. Great. Okay.
All right, next we want to talk about why and how we went with a cross-curriculum approach. And all throughout this, we're coming from the view of equity. And basically what we decided to do is have our at-promise students entering 7th or 9th grade go through 3 different components of this curriculum. So Lena, if you could please put a link to the Open SIAD storyline into the chat, that would be great in case anyone wants to open it up. And I'm going to open it to show you as well, just so that you can kind of see the curriculum that we chose. And I did want to mention that if you're looking for something to do with your students, even if you aren't using this grade level, they actually have this curriculum even for lower or higher grades. So this is a free resource that we want to make sure that you know about. And I want to share with you kind of the why of why we chose this. So what we ended up doing is we were looking for something that we felt that students could really see themselves in the curriculum. So this Open SIAD Health Equity Unit has a great storyline with the essential question, how can people help end pandemics? So we feel that this is very relevant to students' lives, and all throughout the curriculum, they're going to be able to relate to it and see themselves. So it starts with how have our lives been changed because of COVID-19, and does have the storyline approach from science, and it interweaves social emotional learning as well as ELA and math. And then it goes through how can past pandemics help us learn about COVID-19. So we also have an element of history. What can we learn from how the influenza pandemic ended? And then it goes on to look at how do masks affect things, and students are given an opportunity to ask a lot of questions and design their own experiment. And then as it continues, what's great is it actually brings in equity with lesson 7 of who's being protected and who makes decisions. So we really felt like this was a good opportunity for this year. And something with our transition program that we embrace is that from year to year, it's okay if it changes. And we're constantly looking for something that's relevant for our particular students. So we're looking at using this curriculum possibly this year and next year, because it'll be relevant and it's going to address many different subject areas without focusing on it's not the content specifically that's going to help the students. It's more the opportunities to engage in these as an interdisciplinary approach. And then ultimately it goes on to how do pandemics change people's lives. So not only are they going to be working on the cross-curricular content and skills, but there's such a great tie to social emotional learning, especially because we're wanting to re-engage our students as they come back on campus. So that's going to be our main curriculum for summer, and I would definitely encourage checking that out if you're looking for something. And then on the Open Side website, they have the different grade levels. The other thing that we're doing is we're interweaving different workshops for equity and social justice, a week of inspirational math, intro to data science, and then we're also doing enrichment workshops, which I'm just delighted for our students to have some positive inspirational opportunities. And when we're thinking about the why did we go with interdisciplinary approach and not focus as much on drill and kill, go more towards these skills-based approach. This graphic from Tina coming from Stanford, she's showing us the overlap of these practice skills or these practice standards where if students are able to be successful in these, then they're going to be successful in other areas. So while we have a limited amount of time with our students, if we can really emphasize these different aspects, some of these are our like science and engineering practices, our math practices, and our ELA skills, it's going to really benefit the students so that when they go to that transition to the next grade level, it's things that they can really take with them. So when we're looking at some of these pictures, this gives you an idea of some of the things that students will be doing. As you can see, they're looking at what are some of the similarities and differences between past pandemics and this one, creating a timeline. So looking at what's happened and coming to terms with that, doing some journaling, making sure that they are processing what's happening to them, but still really strengthening those math and ELA skills. So reading, doing close readings, pulling out data, asking a lot of questions, and also creating a story about themselves. So that ties it back to students really seeing themselves in the curriculum. Lena, did you want to talk about math?
Yes. So for math, looking at some of the work that students would be doing within the COVID-19 unit. So there's a lot of modeling, looking at data. And so for additional lessons to build in along the way, actually our team took a look at the catalyzing change in high school mathematics and took a look at what are the things that are really going to empower students. And so expanding professional opportunity, them being able to experience wonder, joy, and beauty, and of course, understanding and critiquing the world. So thinking about those items in terms of how we want high school mathematics to empower students and connecting this to the COVID-19 unit in terms of the integration, so that interdisciplinary approach, we decided to look at a couple of different things. One was an introduction to data science. So there's lots of data available. And within the unit, students are going to be looking at data. They're going to be looking at models and different scenarios as well. And so we wanted to give students an introduction then to, look at data. What are things that are interesting to them as well? And how can data be represented? And so I've put a snapshot there actually from the Dear Data project in terms of how two data scientists actually communicated over the course of a year and how data was represented. So oftentimes students are just seeing traditional Cartesian planes, maybe basic bar graphs. We wanted them to see and to really think about how are they going to represent things to other people and tying it back into what are they bombarded with in everyday life in terms of data as well. And again, the connection to the COVID-19 unit and what's going on in their lives right now. Some of the other lessons, there's one on a fair living wage. So it's tying into that, the ELA portion, SEL unit about what are things that have been noticed, so more of that social justice aspect. There's lessons on, there's a lesson on climate change. Again, more of a heavy data focus to look at analyzing data, modeling data, and also thinking about then what is that data talking about? So what arguments can be made? We've also included from ucube.org some of the growth mindset videos and messages about mathematics so that they get a different experience and taste of what mathematics can be. And then also some other activities, because numeracy was still important. We also took a look at some things like estimation 180, where they are engaged in numeracy skills, but in a different way. So it's a little more novel, more fun, trying to make connections, etc. So, and again, they still have to use some of those skills within the COVID-19 unit, but then a teacher could say, okay, if we want to kind of expand on that skill a little bit more, there's where some of that numeracy practice comes in without a drill and kill approach. So more of that critical thinking aspect. How am I thinking about mathematics and how it relates to the world, and also what then could be my professional opportunities.
In terms of science, we are really looking at the science and engineering practices and cross-cutting concepts, and it fits really naturally with the unit. The unit is really focused on students asking a lot of questions and looking for evidence and creating investigations to answer their own questions. There's definitely opportunities for modeling and some of the other items as well. And we had a heavy emphasis on enrichment for science as well, to have students just have really good positive interactions. So for our enrichment, we were very intentional about how the things that we selected. For our high school students, we are actually having an in-person opportunity. The rest of this, I don't know if we mentioned it, is going to be virtual. That was just something that we had to determine before we knew about how things were going to be in play with COVID. So we're going to have one opportunity for our high school students to actually come on campus, and that way they can really connect. School connectedness is huge, especially in a transition program. So we're going to have different rotation workshops on that day. So it's like a field trip to school, but they're thinking about what are some of the career pathways that they could pursue. Another thing that we have is we have 2 science enrichment days. So one of them is just a variety of hands-on activities, and it's more about just like engagement and having experiences where you're successful, or if you're not successful, understanding that that's part of the process. And then the other science activity comes from our school data. So I'm not sure if this is relevant in your district, but for our district, we have a lot of students who are vaping. So on our California Healthy Kids survey, that's one thing that we can address by doing an anti-vaping lab as an enrichment. So we provided students a bag of hands-on materials to kind of do all of these different things. Another thing we did is we sent home acrylic paint and a canvas, and that way the students could have a really high quality art experience. The art project is designed so that it reflects different cultures, genders, styles, subjects, and time periods. And then they also have a digital animation enrichment where they're doing a storytelling through Wik Editor. And then the last week, they also have a music opportunity. So we couldn't give the kids instruments, but we had a music teacher who was creative, and we did purchase licenses so they could create digital beat making. And another thing that I love about what we did with enrichment is we provided licenses or materials that kids could continue to use. so they could continue to make beats for the rest of the summer or year if they wanted to. They'll have plenty of paint to continue painting if they want to. So just, nurturing those different things that our students are passionate about, and reconnecting them with school. So there's several other slides in the slide deck as a reference for you to just show a little bit more in detail about some of our focus. So we're not going to go in depth about these, but I wanted you to know that they're there for you. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to share a Padlet with you, and we want to invite you to share some different ideas with us. So join me on the Padlet, and what we'd like responses about are new ideas or takeaways from things that we've been talking about. So is there something that struck you as something that you could use in the future? Is there a question that you have? So just take a few minutes, and right now we're just going to do the first two columns, takeaways or new ideas. You can also feel free to unmute yourself as well. But, part of this session is really just thinking about how can maybe you're not going to use the COVID-19 unit, but what is something that you could take away and use in a future program? Even if you're not doing a summer program this year, how can you use some of these ideas in the future?
I am really fascinated with this. I love this approach, and please forgive me if I missed this, but where exactly did you guys locate this curriculum?
So Open SciEd is, I actually found it through, thank you, Lena put the link in the chat.
Okay.
So they actually are a high quality free science resource. So if any of your districts haven't adopted yet and you're looking for other science units or want to use a science unit for something else, they have really good high quality free resources. And what led me to this particular unit is I really felt that using the COVID-19 health equity topic would help students make sense of the pandemic.
Yes.
So, that we're all going back to school, but if we haven't processed it,
exactly. I think that's why this is so powerful, is that we're jumping into this and we're not allowing our children to have opportunities to share their experience and connect with real life and whatever trauma they may have went through. And this is developed in such an amazing collaborative way that it's encompassing all these learning opportunities. I absolutely love it. I'm going to explore it, and this is great. Thank you. I love the social and emotional piece to it. It's so powerful. They're not going to be able to move towards those more academic high level thinking until they're able to, share those experiences. So this is great. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that, Jody. And I did want to also just mention that if you don't have a summer program, your teachers could use this at the beginning of the school year to re-engage their kids as well. I know a lot of districts are adding in a week, like at the beginning of the school year, or even if they just use this to kind of ease the kids back to having a more regular schedule, it's a great resource. And then it looks like we have a few other things. Students will have so much to say about COVID and how they've been affected. Love the idea of leveraging this experience across the curriculum. Using this topic with real life application is a wonderful opportunity to pursue an interesting topic with a personal and interpersonal approach. So thank you. And if you guys have any other questions or takeaways, you can feel free to add those to the Padlet as well. And then let's see, slide 25. So the other thing that we wanted to touch on is collaboration. So, our team, although we really started planning for summer a few months ago, this has been in the works for a long time. So I like really talking with other coaches during this collaborative and learning about how everyone does things. So we wanted to just share with you how our collaboration led to this end product. So weekly, we actually have two meetings weekly. We have a longer meeting on Monday and a shorter meeting on Friday. And we're constantly in connection and constantly talking with each other. Part of these meetings are sharing common professional learnings ourselves. All of us are constantly reading books and attending webinars, which I'm sure all of you are since you're here part of this today. And we're also constantly doing data analysis. So this helped us really establish a common vision for what we wanted for our students. So when it came time to look at different resources for our transition program, we were thinking about, we had a strong sense of who it is that we were targeting and what we wanted for them. So lots of professional development about equity, and then also data analysis to see who are these students, so we could say this curriculum will be a good match for them in particular. And then, you know, as the years continue, if our trends change next year, then we would adapt the curriculum as well. So our colleague Audrey Rios also is a big part of this, so we want to acknowledge her as well. And so the initial discussion was we wanted students to see each subject and discipline is interconnected, not isolated. And the focus to be more on skill development and what would students need to be successful in those college and career pathways. We want it to be timely and relevant and to help them really process the pandemic. So we're really excited about having the Open SciEd unit as our curriculum, and then supplementing ELA, math, and enrichment.
And as Laura has explained, when Laura brought this to one of our meetings, one of our coaches meetings, you know, we took a look at it and we thought, you know, this would be a good driver for our summer program. And so we, you know, went through the lessons, took a look, what were the things that were important. We discussed what was cross-disciplinary about this. Of course, you know, how is this going to help students process the pandemic and other things that have been going on that is very relevant to them throughout the school year. So that's then how we went to either develop or find additional lessons that we thought would be great offshoots or complement what was in the COVID-19 unit. So ranging from social, you know, and it's a starting point in terms of we're looking at social justice, we're looking at that social emotional piece, but also allow enough flexibility so that students could actually pursue what really interests them as well. Okay, next slide. And then of course, kind of came the point of how are we going to implement this during the summer? And so on this slide and the next slide is the layout in terms of how we're looking at approaching this throughout the summer. And you could see where we're going to start out actually with an introductory unit for the social emotional learning piece. And this is where students get into essentially, you know, what's been going on, what are things that are of more importance or concerns to them. So that would be more in terms of the ELA history venue, and then also connecting in there as well, starting to think about in terms of mathematics connections to that. We've, you know, given them some lessons on what is a fair living wage, where they're actually looking at data. They come up with their own questions. If the SEL unit could go into, you know, voting be coming up. So we've included a lesson on gerrymandering as well. So looking at it more mathematically, or how our district's set up in terms of how can you guarantee, you know, one group wins versus another, things like even wasted votes. So depending on what interests the students there, they can really dive deeper into that, looking at it in terms of modeling mathematically. And this is where too, depending on the time, we can start our introduction to data science and what that is and why it would tie into what they're interested in and relevant. And so you can see the breakdown over the weeks of how we're tying different things in with the COVID lessons. And for middle school, the same thing. But here we had to break it down more specifically for here's what's going to be done in ELA and math, just because the students will have two different teachers for that. So we broke it down a little bit more. All right. And then using the same link as before for the Padlet, we want to ask you, what are some other perhaps collaboration structures you have seen or happen to be involved in or you have in your district? And please share out any transition programs in your district as well, because this is something that we've done and has evolved over time. We've learned a lot, and we really felt, especially this year with the Open SciEd unit, and as Laura mentioned, our weekly meetings for collaboration, it really helped get us on the same page to really look at a cross-disciplinary program for our students.
Definitely feel free to unmute and share with us your thoughts.
For our district, we don't have anything happening in the summer. Sadly, I love this idea. But what we decided in coming back, which we are already hybrid, but we will be coming back fully beginning July 19th. We're a year-round program. We're going to spend the first 3 weeks, just social and emotional, everything, and talking about what has happened this last year. But I love this, and I am going to explore it and get some additional ideas. So I'm really happy that I was a part of this. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, even if you don't do the whole unit, you might even be able to pull a couple really wonderful activities or use the journal prompts. There's lots of great resources in there for lots of grade levels.
This is Fina from Stanislaus. I know that in Turlock, they have that kindergarten academy. So they do that for 2 weeks. And this year, for the first time in Modesto schools, they're having the state preschool a whole 4 weeks of additional support for the children to help them with transition in August. So I know that that's new for this year, but that's all I know about the districts that we work with.
Thank you so much for sharing. Deborah, did you have anything that you wanted to share or any questions or anybody else?
I'll jump in. I think that what you guys were saying about having high expectations for all students and providing them those opportunities is so important. We were talking in our original breakout room at the beginning of this meeting, and somebody shared that there were some teachers from their district saying things like, oh, my students can't do that, or they can't keep up with that. And that just cuts kids off at the knees before they can even begin. And especially with a focus on STEM and science, they should be seeing people that look like them in STEM and science careers. They should be reading books written by authors that come from a background that they come from, so they can see models, role models that they can look up to. I mean, if you see it, you can be it. So, and that needs to start with us as teachers and coaches of teachers, encouraging them to reach for the rigor and the harder lessons, things like that.
Thanks, Catherine. Well, we really appreciate everyone's time and, thinking through some of these different options. And if you have any questions, we'll be here. But I think that's it for our time for today. Looks like our breakout room's going to end in just about a minute. So It was a pleasure connecting with you guys today, and we'll probably see you in some of the other sessions or one of the groups later.